I thought that remaking a cheesy 80s action flick with modern cinematography and movie-making techniques and effects would be nothing but an upgrade. That it could only be better than the original. It seemed like a very easy win to me. But take out the cheesy charm the original had to offer and toss in a poison pill in the form of the most forced, overcast actor we've seen in some time, and you have a recipe for failure. The Running Man from 1987 was nothing special. It's the exact kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger-led, over-the-top 80s action movie that you think it is. Goofy, lead being slung all over the place, and full of more cheese than even this rat fuck could choke down. But that original movie at least had some heart and some charm, and there's really not an ounce of either to be found in this remake. The story couldn't be more linear and simplistic. This thing runs more than 2 hours without any character development or growth. The action scenes that this kind of movie is supposed to lean on just don't cut it. I'll give them credit for taking a swing, but I think they kinda whiffed on the tone of this movie. And they absolutely whiffed on casting Glen Powell as the lead. I had nothing against the idea of this remake going in. On the contrary, I was ready to like this new Running Man. But it never hit its stride. It stumbled out of the gate and never regained its footing. And we'll talk more about the Running Man's missteps after we get in a recap of the story. So all runners, get to your starting blocks, because we're about to start racing into spoiler territory. Set in the dystopian world of the future, where TV networks have supplanted the government and enacted CCP-style social tracking and scoring, Ben Richards is too good of a guy to fit into the system. Because of this, he finds himself kicked out of every job he's had and unable to buy the meds his sick daughter needs. After promising his wife he won't join The Running Man, the world's most popular TV show where runners compete for cash and pay with their lives, Ben immediately signs up for The Running Man. After a quick Puma product placement ad, Ben meets with Killian, the network executive who genuinely thinks Richard has a chance to win the billion-dollar prize. And Ben agrees without resistance. And then he tells his wife, who's not that mad to be honest. After a quick Liquid Death product placement ad, Ben gets taken to the starting blocks, where it's explained that in order to score the bill, Ben or either of the other two runners will have to survive for 30 days on the run, while being hunted by stalkers and mailing in daily video blogs. Everyday civilians can participate by recording and reporting any of the runners in the wild to score their own payouts. And to spice things up and boost the ratings, the network airs fake footage of the runners' crimes to inflame the general public against them. Hot on their tails will be a team of professional hunters called Stalkers, made up of some nameless goons, one of which looks like Draco Malfoy, and they're led by Chief McCone, who's basically a commando in a gimp suit. Ben promises Killian that he'll be back for him, and then he and the other runners get dropped into the city to begin their runs with a 12-hour head start. Richards, after trying to get a cab to his house on Obama Street, stops by an old friend's place to get a disguise. There, his friend tells him that he was going to offer him a job tomorrow, so if he had just waited, none of this would be happening. Anyway, Ben tries to lay low in a hotel, but after a quick Butterfinger product placement ad, he's forced back on the run. He holes up in a seedy motel, but the goons track him down there too, so he gets naked, then gets dressed, then flees. And he escapes because the professional hunters can't hit the side of a barn. But Richards learns that the hunters can track him anywhere, and they're keeping him alive because it's better for the TV ratings to prolong the hunt, which conveniently removes almost all of the stakes and all of the danger that we as the audience might feel. We can't have any of that going on. The other two runners go down, and now it's Richards against the world. The world, however, starts to come around to his side, and they begin rooting for him. After dispatching another goon, Killian contacts Richards and wants to make a deal, offering him a bonus if he will just kill the people trying to kill him. But Richards declines the deal because he's such a good guy and later goes on to kill these guys anyway. Still alive and on the run, Richard carjacks a woman and she eventually joins him because I guess the movie needs someone for him to talk to for the last 30 minutes. Richards threatens to blow up a bunch of civilians and extorts a getaway jet from the network, crewed by the few remaining stalkers and the Gimp Commando. Here, Killian makes Richards another offer, his own TV show, if he would just kill the stalkers. Ben refuses again, but when the exec shows him clearly fake footage of his family being murdered, Ben freaks out and kills them all anyway. Still refusing to play Killian's game, even though he's been playing it all along, Ben starts barreling toward a more book-accurate ending, intent on crashing the jet into the network tower. His jet gets shot down by a missile, but it's all fake footage once again, and Ben's fate is left ambiguous. For 30 seconds, until he shows up to buy his daughter some cereal and some socks, before returning to the network studio and killing Killian in front of a riotous pro-Richards live studio audience. The end. Luckily, I was able to condense that plot recap a bit more than I've been able to for other recent movie reviews. Largely because there's not much to tell you with this movie's story. Meaning there wasn't much in the way of twists and turns or pivotal moments or any character development that I need to walk you through to accurately relay the story. You know, to maybe explain why someone made a certain decision when they did, that kind of thing. I didn't have to worry about any of that with this movie. There was plenty going on throughout the course of the film, but very little of it was consequential. It felt like a 2-hour movie telling a 43-minute story. One thing that really stood out to me was how charmless and generic they made this movie feel. Some of this is a Glen Powell problem, and we'll get to him, don't worry about that. But say what you will about the 1987 original, they went out of their way to make the villainous stalkers and the supporting characters stand out. They had the chainsaw-swinging butcher Buzzsaw trying to take people's heads off. They had the ice-skating Sub-Zero delivering bonsai body checks in a hockey rink. They had Dynamo, an opera singer dressed like a Christmas tree shooting lightning all over the place. They had the ultimate flamer, Fireball, who came in hot and went out in an inferno. And then they had Killian, the network exec / game show host who had so much character that this movie had to split him into 2 characters. All this movie could offer was generic, nameless goons led by a commando in a gimp suit, with every other role filled by flat placeholder characters. Adding some charm, some flair, some originality is such an easy thing to nail, but this movie didn't even really try. It felt like they needed to write a paper 30 minutes before the deadline, and they just turned in the bare minimum effort. Even at its core, this remake had a totally different dynamic than the original. Rather than Ben Richards being a framed convict who was forced to run to save his friends' lives, this Ben Richards is just doing it for the money. Sure, the money was needed to get medicine for his daughter, but it's a problem that could be solved by getting a job. The movie even shows us that if he had waited a day, he was going to get a job offer, which literally means that him waiting maybe 14 hours would have meant none of this story needed to happen. Word to the wise, if you want people to get invested in your story, don't show us halfway through the story you're telling us that it was all unnecessary. In the original, Arnie's character was running against his will for his freedom. And in this one, he's choosing to do this for cash. These are not the same. I also took issue with the tone of this new iteration. This was one thing they kept largely in line with the original, with goofy one-liners and a general predisposition toward not taking anything too seriously. But without any of the charm of the original, the goofiness feels out of place. And I thought the tone was something they could improve on by taking it in a different direction. Taking a more grounded, gritty approach to this story where we could have felt the overbearing force of this dystopian world would have been a good take in my opinion, and there still would have been plenty of room to work in some goof and some cheesy humor. Instead, we got a story and a set of circumstances that it was hard to take seriously, with Ben Richards constantly telling people to suck his ass. And a lot of that comes down to Glen Powell's character, so I think it's time to have an honest conversation about Hollywood's latest leading man that's being forced on us from all directions. I don't know what your guys' experiences have been, but I feel like I can't get away from this guy. He's getting movies left and right, and he stars in that Chad Powers show. And everything he's been in for the last 2 years has been advertised ad nauseum. When we were sitting at a lounge a few weeks ago, the TV had a commercial for The Running Man, then they ran a commercial for Chad Powers, and then it cut back to Jeopardy where he was the special video guest reading the answers off. And just the Saturday before, he was the special guest on College Game Day. I've seen quite a few media blitzes in my time trying to indoctrinate us with the new Hollywood star that was going to be foisted on us that year. But his marketing team has been going nuts. He's been inescapable. And anytime I feel that push, that sense that something is inorganically being promoted in every corner, I can't stand it. And it would be one thing if there was some real, unique talent behind what they're pushing. But Powell? I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I haven't seen anything that shows me he's a good actor. And who knows what he was given to work with in this one, but he was not cutting it. In The Running Man, he was a charisma void. His only personality trait was anger with a little snark. And in everything I've seen him in, he only has 2 facial settings, scowling and a douchey smile. Ironically, he looks like an in-universe generic movie star. Like, in the world of The Running Man, he'd be the state-endorsed generic star leading every movie. And because that's kinda what's happening in our world, that kinda makes you think, doesn't it? I don't know. I don't think Glen Powell is a very good actor, and he's definitely unworthy of this unnatural push that's been forcing him on us. And he was at the tip of the spear of all the flat characters this movie thrust at us. There wasn't a single character at the forefront of this remake that changed or developed or grew throughout the course of it. The closest thing we got was the woman who was carjacked going from antagonistic to Ben to supporting him. And that all happened in the span of a minute. But Ben? He was bucking against the system in the beginning, and he was bucking against it at the end. He said he'd come back and burn everything down in the beginning, and in the end, he came back and burned everything down. He's fundamentally the exact same person and character throughout the entire movie, only angrier at the end. Nothing he goes through changes him, his perspective, or his goals. And speaking of that woman who got carjacked, what a weird subplot they tried to shoehorn in for the last 30 minutes. Her and the family Ben holed up with for 5 hours with the guy that ran a conspiracy podcast whose daughter had cancer. Those two subplots were such lazy last-minute inclusions that added nothing, that went nowhere, in which the creators didn't even bother to flesh out. But that's okay, right? This is an action movie. At least we'll have tons of great action to sink our teeth into, right? Well, not really. There was a fair bit of action, but it was also predictable and none of it was unique. The fight scene on the plane is the only memorable action scene in the entire movie. And yet again, this felt like the kind of generic action movie you'd find in the world of The Running Man, but no one involved in this movie was creative enough to take a meta approach and play up that angle. Anyway, I hope I was able to convey at least some of the disappointment I felt with this movie. I didn't even expect too much from it. This was just not a good movie, and I think even saying it was mid would be too generous. As of this writing, The Running Man hasn't been out long, but it's getting an 83% from viewers on Rotten Tomatoes, and a far more realistic but still too generous 4.5 on Metacritic. And me? In terms of the movie they gave us, I'd give it a 4, which puts it on the cusp of being a debate watch. But given the opportunity they squandered and the effort they put in, it leaves the kind of taste in my mouth that only a hate watch can, so The Running Man gets the hate watch label. They had a great opportunity to iterate on the original movie, to improve on it, to make it deeper, make it prettier, make it grittier, and make it fun. And in terms of accomplishing all that, they kinda shit the bed harder than Amber Turd. They couldn't even produce the kind of satisfying, mindless action that should be a given. No, when you really look at the assignment that was in front of them and what they turned in, the Running Man remake is pretty pathetic. Did you assume, like I did, that there was almost no chance they screwed this remake up? Do you think Glen Powell is truly the leading man they're trying to sell him as? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to Hatewatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for watching The Running Man trip and fall with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.